Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Welcome, Derrick.
Hey, thank you. How are you?
Thank you for being here. Today we have author Derrick Jackson, thriller, crime thriller, mystery, adventure author of the Shadow trilogy, right?
Shadow One, Shadow One.
Shadow One trilogy. Thank you for that. The first book is called Shadow One, and the second book is releasing March 27th, The Raven Shadow. Jump in and tell us. I got a little bit of your background. You were in the Air Force and special operations things. Tell us about the book, and then it's good always to know the background behind the background. So,
Sure. Thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. So, Shadow One, the series, it's about the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, and the main character, his name is Devin. Very close to my name, of course, and it just happens to be based on true events from my time as a special agent with the Air Force OSI. It is a fictional series, but in the first book, about 60 to 65% of what's written actually happened to me in one way or another. And of course, I went and was careful to change identities, and I mixed some things around a little bit just to make sure I wasn't revealing too much tradecraft. But it is talking about my first 2 years in the Air Force, my probationary time, all the mistakes that I kept making, and then I ended up after the first year, I ended up at Osan Airbase in Korea, and that was it was 12 months, but it felt like a lot longer. And I ended up with some really good agents that became my friends, and the work was steady. There was a lot of it, and it was eye-opening. And the reason I ended up writing the book is because years later, after I retired, I remember my friends and I sitting around at the detachment at Osan thinking, one day someone should write a book about this because they would never believe how crazy all of this stuff is. And we were all just sitting around laughing about it. And I didn't think I would be the one who wrote the book. I just thought we were just joking around. But when I retired, I took a job in corporate investigations, and you can imagine the pace was a lot slower, and I had a lot more free time. And just talking to my friends and reminiscing over some of those investigations, some of the crazy things that happened, I started thinking, well, maybe I should write this book. So initially, I started out with the first outline, and what's kind of different is the first outline I wrote is actually the second book. So actually, I wrote the
oh,
second outline. I realized I thought I had a really good story, but I was kind of starting at a peculiar location. I needed to go back and do more of an introduction for the characters, and then introduce people to the world of Shadow One. Most of the time when you see movies about the Air Force, it's usually about fighter pilots, you know, but the majority of the Air Force is enlisted, they're not pilots. And I wanted to introduce people to what it looks like, the enlisted life of the Air Force. And also I wanted to introduce them to OSI. And for any of your listeners who are not familiar with what OSI is, if you think of the television show NCIS, Navy Criminal Investigative Service, it's the exact same thing. It's just the Air Force. And so I wanted to introduce people to that as far as what's happening and create my own world around with my own characters. And so that was the first book, Shadow One. And the second book, The Raven Shadow, is a continuation of the series. It picks up about a year and a half later after the events in South Korea. And now we're seeing our main character, but he's a little bit different because of the tragedies that he faced in the first book. He's more of a he's not quite so laid back. He's a little bit more direct. And at this point, he's on a counterintelligence mission. And this book actually follows my career because after Korea, I went from criminal investigations to counterintelligence. I was on a team that was providing support to the Air Force Special Operations Command at Hurlburt Field. And so that's what our main character is doing when we meet him in The Raven Shadow. He's traveling, I believe he covers 5 countries during the book, but the meat of the story is that an American airman has vanished. A plane has crashed in Africa, and his mission is to figure out where he is so he can get people there to rescue him. He didn't realize that he would be one of those people that would be doing the rescuing. And so as this counterintelligence search and rescue mission is going on, inside of this story, there's of course a little bit of a romance story as there is with the first book. And it's also a conversation, a cultural conversation between what is the relationship between Africans and African Americans. In the community, a lot on social media, you hear, what they think about us, what we think about them. And that's a conversation that I wanted to explore as our main character is dealing with two different African warlords who are both trying to take possession of the American airman who has crashed. He's trying to work with them to convince them that they should work with a African American who they have nothing in common with versus working with each other, and they grew up down the street from each other.
Interesting. So, well, I guess you can't give us the punchline if they finally decide that it's okay to work with the American.
Right, right.
And so it's really neat. You're in such a good position to write a book like this because you've lived it. You know how this works. And this is, yeah, definitely a topic I've never heard anything about. And from, the confines of my home, I would have no idea what goes on in this world. So it's really cool that you could like help bring awareness and just also highlight issues that many of us aren't on the front lines of, maybe.
Oh, thank you. I think one of the trickiest parts of writing this story, especially the first book, because a lot of it actually did happen, is separating myself from the character because the character absolutely is based on me. But as we introduce some things that did not happen, more of the fiction into the story, the character has to make decisions that I probably would make. He has to make mistakes that I don't want him to make. He has to respond in ways that I don't want him to respond. And so that's a little bit difficult. But I didn't want to write him as though he was a hero. He's not perfect. He's a person who's every chance he gets, he kind of messes up. Not on purpose. He's trying his best, but he's learning. The career field is new to him. It's a difficult job. And something in the first book that actually happened in real life is that my partner and I uh inadvertently stumbled upon some guys who were stealing drugs out of the base pharmacy. We didn't know it at the time. We just went up to introduce ourselves as OSI agents and showed our badge and credentials, thinking we can, make some friends who would be, willing to talk to us in case something was going on. We didn't know at the time that they were the ones that were stealing the pharmaceuticals, but they knew us.
Wow.
They knew us.
Yeah, that
And
was their
so,
job to know you, right?
right. And so in the book, the good guys become the ones who are getting hunted. And those two people that are in the pharmacy are also connected to a human trafficking ring. And so they're using the drugs to fund the human trafficking ring. And so we're mixing all of those things together that we saw in Korea. Unfortunately, we did see human trafficking. We did see the cages where the girls were kept in. We did hear the horror stories of how they were brought to Korea and their passports were taken from them. And so I used all of my experiences to put together a fictional tale, and that's the first book.
Wow, that is very brave to like be able. Was it hard, like emotionally, to go back and write that?
Uh, in a way, yeah, in a way. I'm happy about the fact that we were able to fight against this as much as we could. A little bit sad because I know that we could have done more because it's a very political situation. Even the people above us in the Air Force, the leadership that wanted to do more, they couldn't because it's actually happening right off base, and the Koreans are the ones who are in charge of it. And as much as we push against them, they may not even want the trafficking to happen, but it's money. It's money. If they shut down the businesses, the business owners are going to protest, the base is going to be affected, and we're looking at a lot of money that's not going to be going back and forth between the two governments. And so, unfortunately, we didn't have the impact that we wanted to have.
Right. Well, the political situation is always tense, and yeah, all those things are, white lines and gray lines and the benefit of, you know, for the greater good, maybe.
Right.
That's a very hard moral quandary there. And as a person who's not in charge, you really don't have that power, I guess,
Right.
to affect things more than you would like, and probably in a lot of situations. So a lot of different issues going on in a lot of different moral stages there.
Exactly.
So had you been a writer before this point, or was this your first, I'm just going to jump in and learn how to write a book?
Yeah, I was just as surprised as everyone else. I never had any thoughts about being a writer, ever, until I sat down one day, decided, I'm going to give it a try. And when I wrote the outlines, I realized I had a really good story. I let a few people read it. They all agreed, and the feedback I kept getting was, this needs to be a book. And so for me, the hardest day of writing was the very first day when I was sitting there and that cursor was just blinking at me. And I was thinking, man, I have to write a few hundred pages and I don't know how to write the first word. But I kind of overcame that fear and I started writing and I probably wrote the first page maybe 5, 6 times after deleting it, not liking what I wrote. But it became probably the best experience of my life. I didn't realize how relaxing it would be, how exciting it would be. I look forward to getting home from work every day. I come in, turn the computer on, and I'll sit there all night. And I enjoy getting to the places where I know what I want the scene to feel like. I know what I wanted to look like, but I need to work it out. And so sometimes it'll take me days to get it right. And I realize when it's a really big scene like that, not to force it. And so sometimes I'll just walk. I walk outside, I walk around in my house with this scene in my head, and I listen to music, and it keeps happening over and over. When I find the right song, I'll hear it, and that song will start playing out like a music video and I can see the scene happening in my mind. And then I would take the emotions that I got from that song and put that into the writing. And every time it helped me get past that writer's block.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think the same thing sort of happens for me. Like when I'm stuck on a scene or I don't know how I'm going to get my characters from one place to another, I go and do something else and just keep replaying it in my head. So I'm like, oh yeah,
Oh
that's the
yeah.
way, and that's the best feeling. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get that feeling when you figure out. So it is like very creative in that way. Well, not that writing is not creative, but I was surprised at like the creativity that comes out of those moments.
Yeah. And
So
I guess
very fun.
one of the biggest things I like the most about writing is that, at every job I've had to write reports of investigation, whether it's counterintelligence reports, criminal reports, corporate investigative reports. But I'm always writing it in someone else's voice. Here's the template, here's how it has to be done, here's how it has to be structured. And I've learned from all of those different styles. But when you write your own book, you can write it in whatever style you want it to write. It's your voice. You can convey whatever message, whatever feeling that you want to convey in that writing, and that's very enjoyable for me.
Yeah, that's very cool. I think oftentimes the best books come out of those personal stories. That's how I started my writing career too. I never thought I'd be an author, and
Yeah.
yeah, just started writing my own story and haven't quit writing since then. So, what the Raven Shadow is coming out March 27th, 2026. Is there? This is supposed to be a trilogy. You already have the third book planned out.
I have the outline written for the third book. I'm still working on the ending. I have in mind what I want it to do, but we'll see. I'm thinking I'm gonna take this year and do my job of trying to promote the second book, take my time, promote it, and then maybe at the end of the year I'll start writing the third one.
Fun. Yeah, that's always a kind of chicken and egg type of thing of promoting your book versus writing the next one.
Right. This was a learning experience for me because I was so excited when I published the first one and I went on one event to uh to advertise it. And as soon as I came back, I started writing the second one. And now I know I should have taken more time to advertise my book, but I was so excited to get back to this story to actually, create it into a book. But this time I'm I'm gonna relax a little bit and do my job and promote it.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance, but yeah, you're right. It's fun to go to events and talk to people about your books, and that's the most exciting part to me, is to talk to readers and get that excitement. I started this podcast in 2020 when we weren't able to do that for that
Oh,
very
okay.
reason, because I
Okay.
missed my writing people and thought, if I talk to them and we record, then people will find out about our books. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you started this.
yeah, well, thank you for being here, Derrick. Sorry, I was about to call you Jackson, Derrick.
Yes.
Um, Derrick Jackson, tell us where we can find you and your books.
Well, my books are on Amazon, or you could go to my website, derrickmjackson.com. They're also available online at Walmart and online at Books A Million.
Great. And is your author name Derrick M. Jackson? It is. So we want to
It
make
is.
sure and note that. Derrick M. Jackson with the Shadow One trilogy, crime, thriller, adventure. Yeah, and your covers are amazing. They're beautiful. So
Thank you.
super
Thank you.
intriguing. That they kind of start the story on their own, it seems like. So I think
Yeah,
anybody with that loves really a mix of genres will definitely flock towards your books. So thank you for being here, and I hope you'll come back next time you release your next book.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Derrick. Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.